You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again. Today, we have another special guest for you. We're going to talk to a creator of Reprogram for Success, the one and only Elaine Schmidt, and she is also all about quantum consciousness accelerator, inspirational speaker. She's also into holistic healing, and man, she's also into life business coach, and she is a light worker. Today, we're going to talk about, for the topic, all about what's on her website, JanetElaineSmith.com, Reprogram for Success. So I want to welcome you, Janet, to the show. Let's say, first of all, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm fantastic. I'm excited to be here today.
Well, I appreciate you taking time to be here with us. First and foremost, man, tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to do what you're doing today.
Well, I grew up in a small town. I grew up in Wyoming. And when I was very young, I was already interested in angels and energy work. And at 10, I was out in the fields doing the laying of hands. I didn't really know that's what it was, but I was doing it on the horses out in the fields. And then as life had it, I just went into the mainstream. It wasn't talked about much in my family. And so I went into the mainstream, ended up getting married, ended up, working, doing a lot of different things. I worked for I was chairman of the board of a nonprofit that helped homeless women get a better education and helping their children. Did a lot of that type of work. And I ended up getting divorced. And in that process, I ended up receiving a large sum of money. And now I had a chance to really help the underserved, individual and nonprofit alike. So I started giving out money. And before long, everybody was attached to me for my money, and I couldn't say no. And then I found myself in arbitration because the financial advisor, who was with a well-known international firm, had made an investment outside the scope of the firm and lost a lot of my money. And so during the arbitration, I kept thinking, I'm going to lose this money. I'm going to lose this money. I know I'm going to lose this money. I never once didn't think I wasn't going to win. I always knew I would win, but I just had this frequency, this quantum physics thing, this energy going on. And sure enough, in the end, the financial advisor was disbarred. His partner was fined. His company was fined, but I got only 10% of what I lost. So now I'm sitting here reviewing my whole life of everything that happened to me from childhood to present day. And I was looking at what was working and what wasn't working for me because something wasn't working. And that drove me to epigenetics. And epigenetics says it's the imprinting and coding from our ancestors passed down to our parents. And our parents pass it to us from birth to about 8 years old. After that, the programming that gets passed to us is from society, anything catastrophic that happens to us and, our friends. So I started examining, from 8 years old younger, where my family came from, what they endured. And this was really, I focused first on money consciousness. I went into other things later, but money consciousness is a big thing for all of us because we are programmed from our ancestors and our parents about how we see money. And so I came from 8 generations of ministers who signed up to be economically challenged, who gave their last cents to the underserved, and who really had no funds to manage. Now, I don't want to take away from them because they were courageous. I mean, they came over here in 1838 and taught their language to the Native Americans and then taught their religion. So I don't want to take that away from them. But at the same point, I didn't sign up for that. I did not sign up for that. So I had to look at the money consciousness. And that kind of started the reprogramming for success because I started looking at different aspects of myself that would contribute to it. And a large part of this isn't just our energy. It is our left and right cortex of our brain. It's our subconscious, our conscious mind. And so I started studying Neuro-Linguistic programming, ThetaHealing, movement integration, hypnotherapy, PSYCH-K, and just I'm certified in probably 20 different things because I wanted to understand why I was the way I was. And then I wanted to undo a lot of it. And that's what kind of birthed my program, because I learned through my own experience. And I can honestly say probably 95% of everything anyone who's ever come to me has experienced, I've experienced it. I've experienced abandonment as a child, as an adult. I've experienced, economically challenged as a child. I've experienced lack of self-esteem. And so it took me down that rabbit hole. And I really started reprogramming, dissecting every area of my life.
Man, you have a lot of services too that you provide. You can go to your website, JanetElaineSchmidt.com, and these different services are targeting specific areas that are being examined and treated. So if you don't mind, share some of the different services that you're providing and the differences between each.
Well, I normally, if you're a meditator, if you're somebody who meditates, I'll always use ThetaHealing. And ThetaHealing and Neuro-Linguistic programming are similar in the way that they use timelines in their healing process. And a timeline is like, if I said to you, think of something that happened to you when you were 10 years old. Now, if you had your eyes closed, I'd say, which direction does that land? And that would tell you which direction your past is, where you're holding energetically speaking, you're holding your past, and your future is the opposite. But ThetaHealing is a way where the practitioner and the client both go into a light theta state. They draw energy in them. And then the practitioner puts energy into it's somewhat like Reiki, where the practitioner puts energy into the quantum field of the client. And it uses a timeline very similar to Neuro-Linguistic programming. Now, Neuro-Linguistic programming, there is no energy per se. I always think there's energy no matter what, because we're all made out of energy. But I'm not directly putting energy into you. I'm directly going into your quantum field, your quantum line of where, let's take fear, where fear first happened in your life. And then once I can remove that, once I remove it and put safety, security, and confidence in its place, then it's like a shoelace. It unties and it goes all the way down to present day. So after that, I'll take PSYCH-K. Everything I do, I always use PSYCH-K on the back end. And what PSYCH-K does is it brings somebody into the whole brain state. It brings your left cortex and your right cortex into an agreement on the new belief that you wish. So, and it's a process by crossing different parts of your body, because our left side of our brain controls the right side of our body, and our right side of our brain controls the left side of the body. So it's definitely has several different techniques that then can bring you in a whole brain state on the new belief. And it can happen as fast as 15 minutes. And I will say this, if anybody knows who Dr. Bruce Lipton is, check him out. He wrote the bestseller of Biology of Belief. In the back of that book, he says that PSYCH-K is the reason why he finished that book, and also why he has great relationships today. And that it's the fastest, most efficient way to change a self-limiting belief into a self-enhancing belief. And so that's why I always use PSYCH-K on the back end. Eye movement integration is something else that I offer. And that is for trauma or phobias or anxiety. And see, when we have trauma, without going into how the mind works. We hold it fragmented in our mind. And that's why it's really hard for the left cortex and right cortex to agree on healing, right? But what eye movement integration does is through just simple movements of my hand and you watching it, it crosses the left cortex with the right cortex. And now they can be in agreement and you can have healing. So it's called the inner healer. And now they're agreeing. And now you're in a whole brain state on healing. So you may remember the trauma, but you're desensitized from the feelings of it anymore. So depending on who comes to me and what is happening with them, I'll use all of these techniques, or I'll just use 2 of these techniques. I also offer Reiki, and I will do just a plain PSYCH-K session if that's all they want is a plain PSYCH-K session, I'll do that as well.
Once again, listen to I Am Refocused Radio. I'm talking to our guest today, Janet Elaine Schmidt. You can go to her website, janetelainschmidt.com. And today's topic, we're talking about reprogramming for success. And let's just try something real quick. Say someone's listening right now, and maybe they're just like, all right, I know what I want to do in life. I'm kind of doing it. I just want to make it more advanced. I want to make it bigger. I want to dream bigger. I want to do bigger goals. I want to do all these great things. But I'm in the groove. I'm doing it. I just feel like I'm flatline, like I'm not really getting to that next level. What would you say to that individual who kind of knows what they want to do? They just need that boost.
Well, by your words that you're saying to me, because that's part of neuro-linguistic programming, right? Neuro is the brain, linguistic is the language we use, right? So I'm listening to the language that you're using, and I would say that there's just a tiny block of lack in there. I would say there's a tiny block of lack, and there's a limit on abundance. And we put limits on ourselves. It's kind of like when I talk about money consciousness, we have abundance consciousness too. And people need to understand this. And also self-esteem consciousness. And so when we go through this, I can't just stop there. I have to look at every single area because what I would say first is you have a limit. The person has a limit on abundance. So what I could say is if somebody thinks $50 is a lot of money, right? They're holding that as that's a tremendous amount of money, but they want $100 and they ask for the $100 and they're putting energetically out there to receive the $100, right? And they have the joy that's coming with the $100, right? And they receive it, guaranteed they will not hang on to it. The most they'll hang on to is the 50 because they only have a capacity for that. So what I would say to this particular person that you're bringing up, I'd say, okay, let's look at your capacity for the abundance that you desire in what you're going to do. And let's increase it 100% plus infinity.
Once again, listen to I Am Refocused Radio. I'm talking to our special guest, Janet Schmidt. You go to her website, janetelainschmidt.com. And we was just talking about just destroying the negative limited thinking. And with the clients that you've been working with in recently or time ago, was an example of a client who had that limited way of thinking, and what was their reaction when they finally had that light come on, when it's like, okay, I don't have to stay at this level, I can expand?
Well, first of all, we have what I call automatic negative thoughts, or I call it ants. And those are tough. So the first thing I give people is kind of this phrase to say, isn't it wonderful? Something marvelous is happening to me right now. Every time they have that. But aside from that, when I'll use an example of a client that came to me for abundance. She said, listen, I have abundance with my relationship. It's very strong. And friendships, family strong. But, my businesses, I'm just having trouble. So I feel like there's some block. And so we went through clearing where she had lack in her timeline, where she first felt lack of abundance or lack of prosperity. right? And so we went through that, we cleared it out, right? And we put limitless abundance, limitless prosperity, or ultimate abundance. Because when we have ultimate abundance, I like to use that because when we have ultimate abundance, you have success in your personal life, right? Love, you have great health, you have wealth, you have everything that you want. So that's what we strive for. And so I went through the process of, we put PSYCH-K balances in with her. I cleared it out. I used Neuro-Linguistic programming or ThetaHealing, and I put out the old belief. I started bringing in the new belief using those techniques, but now I come in with PSYCH-K. And we first said, I have an abundant mindset. So there's a way for me to test to see if your subconscious mind really believes, because you could tell me I have this abundant mindset, and I could test your subconscious, and you don't. I mean, it would test weak. And so at that point, she tested weak. So at that point, we started building up the prosperity and abundance consciousness in her. So we did a goal of, I have an abundant mindset. So that's the basic, that's the base, right? So we did that, we built that up. And then once we did that, I also put, I am unconditional love in me, as me, and through me, and I am enough. So that from a self-esteem issue, because self-esteem is connected to our money. Believe it or not, it is connected to our money. So I built up the self-esteem at the same point. And so we did about 4 different balances there. And then I ended with, I have increased my capacity for abundance 100% plus infinity, instantly, naturally, and automatically. So by the time I put that in, we could test her for, I have ultimate abundance, and it tested positive. So her subconscious and her conscious mind were all in agreement on her ultimate abundance now. And I always ask my clients, please let me know how you're going. That's how I can keep track of my matrix, because this technique works 95% of the time. And she wrote me back. I wrote her, and she wrote me back. She goes, this has been the craziest month. It's been the most abundant month I've ever had. So she got rid of her blocks.
And that's interesting. And I heard saying this, person told me this on the show before, and that is, where the mind goes, the body follows. Yes. And if everything he's saying, say as an individual, and it's just like, okay, what can I do before I even get to Janet? Like, what's some of the exercises I can do daily? Like, say it's just like someone who's going to school or someone who's just going to a day job. What's some of the small exercises that they can experiment with to just kind of get the ball rolling?
Well, number one is, what I would say to you is, be the student of your life. Be really honest with yourself. Write down different areas of your life. If there's an area that everything's working, write everything and write why it's working. What are the attributes that you have working? But if you have something that's not working, then be honest about it not working. And then you can start from there. Because once we recognize what's not working, that's the first process in reprogramming, because you're recognizing it. So you're saying it's not working. And I would really say to you, anytime you have negative thoughts, and I mean write it down. Isn't it wonderful? Something marvelous is happening to me right now. Because when you say that statement, it makes you smile. It makes you smile. I don't care if you have to put on Post-its all over your house. Put it on Post-its all over your house. Because part of reprogramming yourself is just that. That's reprogramming yourself. I'd also say to anybody who loves affirmations, if you love affirmations, love listening to them, they're really helpful, but only 30% of the time do they stick. So I discovered through my clients that it is really helpful if they record the affirmation in their own voice and then listen to it back. So I know this takes a little bit of time, but just do it, because if you record them, it's kind of like when you're in your mother's womb you hear your mother's voice. When you're birthed, you recognize your mom because of the voice. Well, your soul is the same way. Your soul recognizes it. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, that's me. And yes. I would say listen to it over and over in the car. If you're in the car, listen to that over and over. And if you don't want to do that, just record. Isn't it wonderful? Something marvelous is happening to me right now. For like 5 minutes, record it, and then listen to it on your way to work, because it will put you in that positive mindset. And you won't go into it's. Listen, this is the one thing people need to understand. The biochemical effects of your brain's functioning shows that your cells are affected by your very thoughts.
Wow.
So that means your thoughts, your emotions, your behaviors, everything has energy. That's why quantum physics and epigenetics have such a powerful effect on our lives, because it just is. And so when you understand that, you're like, I don't want negative thoughts. I want to stay in that happy spot. Because when we can train ourselves, and it's all about training yourself. When you start training yourself, reprogramming yourself, watch how your life changes. One of the biggest things I had to overcome was fear. I inherited fear from my mother. My mother worried about 99.9% of everything that was never going to happen. And I ended up with that fear. And I just one day said, I don't want that fear. And so I put in an imaginary bubble, the word fear, and attached it to my body. And every time I felt fearful, I cut it away. I imagined it being cut away. And I put safety, security, and confidence in its place. Attached it. And I must have done this the first couple of days, like 20 times, but I kept at it because I really wanted, and I had come up with that on my own. I don't know how I did, but I thought I'm going to do this. And this was before Reprogram for Success. And I just kept doing it. And after 1 week, I was no longer fearful like I was. I was in a situation where I would have been so fearful. And instead I handled it this way. And so I went this way instead of going that way. And this is how we change our lives, both personally and professionally, when we can overcome, especially huge things like fear, because fear is a way we see reality. And when you can change the way you see reality, your life shifts.
Yeah, that's some good stuff. Once again, listen to Refocus Radio, talking to Janet Schmidt. You can go to her website, JanetElaineSchmidt.com. And with today's topic about reprogramming for success, I'm a visual person. So listen to everything you're saying. Is it possible, just as an example, if someone imagine themselves, like, let me picture myself, what would a professional athlete who's successful be doing right now? What would a professional doctor or writer or musician be doing right now? Is that also a possible tool that they can use in addition to what you offer in your services?
Yes. Are you saying, can a professional athlete use what I do?
Well, what I'm saying is, like, if an individual like imagine himself or visionary, like use their mind to picture themselves, what would a professional athlete or a professional fill in the blank be doing right now? So that way they are actually growing like someone that they would aspire to be like.
Yes. That, in matter of fact, that it is, you have to put yourself in the behaviors, in the emotion, in the thought patterns that you would have as a professional athlete or as a successful. And that's part of, like, even if you go and get PSYCH-K done, that's part of it. When I went, and this will give people an idea of what even PSYCH-K does. There's, if you're only going to do one technique, I would tell you, go do PSYCH-K. But when I went to my basic PSYCH-K teaching the first time, there was a gentleman there who had brought in his teenage children to learn it. And he used PSYCH-K to become a multimillionaire. And so now he wanted his children to, because he felt his children for their grades, so they would never doubt that they weren't bright. And as an athlete, you can be a good athlete, but you might have that little block, that tiny thing holding you from being that professional athlete or that Olympic athlete or the top athlete on your team. You might have just that tiny thing. And PSYCH-K can change that for you. PSYCH-K can change your belief and enhance. So whatever's self-limiting you, you can enhance it. So yes, I would say to anybody, if you're working towards being in a certain career, then you have to start having the attributes and thought process that someone in that position has.
And we keep getting to this word block, and I like that because it makes you think, okay, maybe I should be asking myself, what is blocking me? Why am I getting this block? And with that, you also go over emotional resilience. What is emotional resilience tools, and how does that work?
Well, we all get into a certain situation where so much information is coming in, correct? Or I give a couple tools to my clients when they come in, so that if you're in a stressful situation, you can really bring your emotional resilience and intelligence in more of a center alignment. The samurais used to use what was called the 1 point, and the 1 point, because they'd have before going into battle, they'd have so many thoughts going through their mind that they'd be top heavy. So they wanted to be centered, more solid on their horses, harder to knock off. So they would go through a process where they would take all the thoughts and emotions and put them in their head and hold them all the way down to 2 inches below their belly button, which is the hara point. And then they'd have it flow into the ground, and it would free up your mind. And it only takes 90 seconds. I give that. It's actually on my website on one of the videos there for people to go through. It's an excellent way to clear out your mind and just start over again. So even if you're in a meeting or you're with friends or you're doing something and it just feels like everything's kind of closing in a little bit, all you have to do is go into the bathroom and literally visualize all these thoughts, and close your eyes, visualize all these thoughts in your head flowing down to 2 inches below your belly button, and then flushing all the way down your legs into the ground, to the center of the earth. And open your eyes, and you're just like, whoa, I just did that. So that's one of them I use. And another one that I use to keep people just kind of bring you, so you're aware, you're more focused. And I use this especially when I'm speaking to a group. It's called being aware of the awareness. And it just brings you slowly down to where you're just aware of being here right now. And that's a good one for anyone to use before they even start their day, just so that you're completely present. But if you don't feel that you're present, sit down for 90 seconds and be aware of the room you're in. Be aware of the sounds. Be aware of the chair. Be aware of the breath going in and out of your lungs. And in the end, just sit there and go, I'm aware of being aware. I'm here. And it just brings you quietly down.
That's similar to, I heard people say on my show, just in different ways, but in a very common way, is the power of just being in the now, living in the moment, because a lot of times we want to worry about the past, or we want to worry about the future, that we forget what is going on right now, and what we decide to do in that moment is going to create the future, and it's going to leave a legacy in the past. So how living in the now can also benefit the person to not be distracted by all these crazy thoughts.
Yes. It just brings you really down to just being here. And you're not running ants, automatic negative thoughts at that moment.
Yeah. Man, you make it sound so easy, but when people go visit your website, like I mentioned before, you have a lot of services. I know you mentioned one that if they want to get started, you mentioned the PSYCH-K is a good one to start with, the advanced PSYCH-K. But if someone who's like a business owner or CEO and they want to dive in something really advanced, what's another service that you recommend for CEOs and entrepreneurs who are business leaders in the community?
Well, I do have a package on there for specifically for entrepreneurs, and I believe it's a 10-week course, and I cover everything from so they get 10. Most of my sessions are 110 minutes long, so it's almost like 2 hours long. And so in each session, they get different things and we go along the way. So not only will we approach part of their personal life, but we will be approaching their business life as well. And I'll be taking them in, and they have access to me. They can text me, every day if they want, but I'm available to them too. But it is a process. And by the time they get done with the 10 weeks, from a business standpoint, we've covered everything they need to cover. And from a personal standpoint, we've covered everything that they want to cover. So it's an intensive workout for them because they have to come really prepared to examine what's working and what's not. And to look at their programming and be honest where it came. I mean, this is the other thing I'd say to your listeners. If you have a belief that you really strongly believe in, where did it come from? This is the best way for you to examine yourself. Did it come from your parents? Did it come from society? Or is it something you really believe?
Yeah.
And that trait that's stopping you, did that come from your ancestors? Did that come from you? Did that come from society? Where did it come from?
Man, that's another great point. Once again, man, on I Am Refocused Radio, I have an honor talking to our guest today, Janet Schmidt. You can go to her website, JanetElaineSchmidt.com. And before we let you go, someone who is listening to us right now, they're in the moment because they're here. They're listening to us speak. When they make that decision to finally, because what I'm hearing too throughout this is you really just need to basically believe, but not just believe. You have to take that next step and not just think about, oh, it would be nice. Well, of course it would be nice, but what can I do to make that thought would be nice to actually come to life? When they're listening to you and I live in the moment and making our lives better, what if there's one thing that they should remember throughout the whole process? What is that one thing that they should always hold on to?
That change is obtainable. That success in every area of your life is obtainable, but the power is in your hands. We have the power to change everything, just like we have the power. We have free will. But I will say this. Anybody listening that mentions they were listening to your podcast, I'll give them 50% off their first session.
Awesome. Well,
not the entrepreneurs, but I won't do that. But I for an entrepreneur, I would give them a 50% off the one session. So if anybody's wants to test it out.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you doing that. So you listen to this right now, make sure you visit Janet's website. That's JanetElaineSchmidt.com. And reprogramming is something that is not talked about enough. I don't think people talk about it enough. And people like you who are certified and are professional, you know the science behind it. You know what you're talking about. You're not just, hug a tree, everybody, be happy. It's a little bit deeper than that. So I appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us. And before we let you go officially, to our listeners and to people listening to us right now, if they had an opportunity to work with you, what do you hope with your clients that they learn from the experience when they work with you versus someone else?
That they'll have a seismic change in their life. That life, that they will be beginning to realize that life is about that center line of the yin and the yang. It's about achieving the harmony.
And there you go.
And that change is easier than you think it is. It's just a little painful to recognize what's not working. That's the hardest part.
Well, there you go. Once again, too, I'm talking to you, Janet Schmidt. You go to her website, janetelaneschmidt.com. I want to say thanks again for taking time in your schedule talking to I Am Refocused Radio today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a joy.